Again, welcome. And my name is Shari Pash, and we're going to just kick off here. So let's see if I can get my slides advancing. And okay, the very first one is what I just like to talk about. Again, everyone at the organization or your chamber plays a role in member engagement. We know that. How do we make sure it's relevant, strategic, and really makes the impact that you want, right? So let's talk about some ideas that may be enhancements, some ideas that may be new, but everybody pull those members along like the visual shows you there, okay? So when you think about this, member knowledge, this is where it starts, right? Why do our members invest? What's the ROI that they're looking for? What's relevant to them? That connectivity, who do they want to connect with? What challenges do they have? And how can you as a staff in an organization help your members and be the solution? So again, this is where it can be by member type, but do your staff, your volunteers, whoever your team is. Sometimes your team is you and a team of a membership committee or ambassadors. Otherwise, if you're a larger staff, you have a large team to talk about. So when I say team, connected to whoever your team is that you have to work with. The key thing is with all these different elements here, all these bubbles, are we documenting that information? Can any of your staff go to a member's record and see what their ROI is? To see who they're looking to connect with. What are their challenges? This is where I really encourage you to use your software. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. But definitely think about that. This is something I challenge a lot of the teams I work with, that every time a staff person is on the phone or in person, but basically each interaction, learn one new thing about that member or member business and ask one relevant and strategic question. So you're learning one thing and you're educating on one thing. If every person who's talking to a member could do that, it would make a huge difference in the knowledge back and forth. If you're talking to a member and they want to grow their business, describe to me your perfect customer or client. Get that documented. If it's a bigger picture and they're talking about workforce, we know members everywhere have the workforce challenge. Learn one thing about workforce that's a challenge for them. Educate them on one thing you're doing for workforce. So just have that be kind of an expectation when you're talking to a member. Just throw a casual conversation point out there. Hey, while I got you on the phone, we're really trying to gather some trends from the members. Can I ask you this question? And ask them that question. Okay, so again, that's a way to really start to, the whole team can engage in that, gathering that data. Now, the key is having that data parked somewhere so you can pull from it and query a report. That's what we're going to talk about when we talk about member software down the road. But make those custom fields, make those affiliate codes, wherever you store that information, make sure you have some of these strategic questions as a field to enter that information so that you can run a report from that. It doesn't really help if it's just summarized in the task area because you can't pull a report from that. And that's what we want to start to gather trends and such. Another thing is discovering our members why, their priorities and their motivations. This is how all staff can really have an impact. They can gather this information and they can understand this information. It's important that everyone on your team understands the why of members. You know what, this is Simon Sinek's golden circle there, the what the organization is, how people can engage, but why do they need to engage? I go to this one all the time because it's so important. So again, you might also look at this why based on generations. Do you start to see some trends pop out there? So again, it's really easy to collect this on those new members, but what about those members who've been with you for 5 years, 10 years? Do we understand what their why is still? So again, every time a staff person's talking to a member, emailing with a member, gather something that, learn that priority, learn that motivation. What is their why? And have a field that you can document that in so you all can use that information. So when you get ready to talk to a member, you can literally see their why and you can reference that in that conversation. And that's where all your staff can play a role with this. This is a really important piece. So again, I think that the why is just a really important piece and it's got to be recorded. If we just ask, and we know it, but we know it's got to be documented somewhere, okay? And again, this is what helps move people from those transactional members into the more value-driven members. Okay, so this goes right hand in hand, knowing your members. How does this apply for all the areas that your organization has? Do you have economic development? If you have workforce, you have policy people, all of that. We have to understand why that member's invested. We just talked about that, what's relevant to them, How's your business shifted during the pandemic? These are just a few things that you can ask to kind of know. And how does your team use this information then? And how do they even find it? Do they know where to go? Again, if you're a larger organization chamber, then do your staff all know where this information's at on a member record? We definitely have to educate internally sometimes to make sure that we're capturing this. Again, how do you provide them the needed exposure they're looking for? Do we know, are they looking for exposure to grow business with clients or within your industry or within your community, perhaps even? Okay, so again, really important that we keep track of this information. And again, the more you can involve all of your team in these discussions, it's really critical. All right, another thing is, as a team, can you determine how would you like your engagement with members to change? I hear at every conference I speak at, every on-site client I work with, we need to increase member engagement. So what does that look like? What does that really mean when you say you want to increase your member engagement? So that's where I think as a team, you need to determine that engagement can be clicking, right? We want more people clicking on our newsletter, not just scanning the headlines. We want to see more people engaged in that. Social media, definitely events. We still have the non-dues revenue events, and we need those to be populated. We need people attending those. But what does that mean for yours? More engagement is supporting a policy issue that you're working on, perhaps. So, but as a team for your organization, your chamber, we want to determine what engagement is and how, if we want more of it, what do we want more of? Then you can start to determine how do you use your staff strengths to impact that. Okay, and then have measurements for that as well. Because again, you want to make sure that when you start at the beginning of the year right now, which is a perfect time, what does it more engagement mean? And start to measure that, put measurables in place for that. Okay, so again, as you plan it, once you know what you want to see, you can then involve more staff in more committees and things like that. So I'm going to just keep an eye on the chat here and things. So yeah, might you have a sort of a questionnaire and sample chart in which to document responses? Yeah, actually, what I do have is some of those questions, those strategic questions, and we'll talk about those in a couple minutes. So I think, Katie, that was you who asked that. So if I don't get to that before the end of this, we'll circle back. At the end of this, I'll try to save some time for going through those chats and those questions. Okay. But yeah, any tools like that I can help provide, I'm definitely open to. Okay. All right, and this is a really key piece of this. I'm going to move you into this conversation of transactional versus relational, and this is a really relevant way your staff can make an impact. Think about your members, your transactional members. They compare the cost of events, maybe certifications, programs, the dues that they pay, and they're looking for that direct dollar-to-dollar value. I know all of you would be raising your hand most likely. Most everyone I talk to has members that do that. I gave you $400 for dues. I'm looking for $400 back in savings. That's that transactional member. So we want to move them into that relational. You hear a lot of different terms of what people call that, but moving them into that where they look at their investment as a way of doing business. It's a key strategy of their business. Maybe it's key to their growth, their industry, their career. But this is where we want to start to think about that really your member experiences are starting to happen when we can move members from that transactional more into that relational realm, right? And what it can really mean is that they stop weighing these costs and they really think of this: I didn't join your organization, I invested in my company. And when I invest in my company, these are the things that you do for our industry, for our community, for my company even. So again, we want them to start thinking about an investment versus just I paid dues, I joined something, I joined the gym I have to go, I joined the church I need to go, I joined Rotary, I've got to go every week, right? So I think it's really important that we start to think about them investing in, they're investing in their company, they're investing in your community, they're investing in their industry, whatever your type of organization works with. But it's important that we start to think about investment versus joining, because you all have these members, right? And I do think through the pandemic, I mean, we're not through it, I guess we're still in it, but from the start to now, I think every member organization has thrived during this as far as showing value because you were the lifeline. You've been the source of information. So again, the more that you can really take that, what's happened this last year, year and a half, and show the value beyond just events and such, it's important that that's where you move into that relationship with them. Okay. So again, think about if you have those members that are transactional, and most of you have a lot of them, what's your intentional strategy to move them out from there? So that's what we want to start to keep an eye on. And we'll talk more about that as we go through here. And you might pick up some more ideas in there. And I know I'm that shiny object person. So it was actually Karen who asked that question. So sorry, I have to look at these things and just, I try to stay on target here, but I do get distracted. So I'd like to see if there's a question that's needed to be answered right then. So we will work on that some more. Anyway, all right. So when we think about that next step, it's another piece is still thinking transactional, right? Do we interact in that transactional way, or are we being relational in our conversation and in our messaging? This is what's really important. Are you calling to talk about renewing someone's membership? I just worked with a team this week, and that's what they said. Their voicemail is like, I'm calling, to talk about renewing your membership, basically just in those words. And they don't get calls back. And you know what? When you think about your emails and your voicemails that you're leaving, would you call yourself back? I asked that question and the team burst out laughing. Go, I don't think I would. So we want to think about, are we transactional in our messaging? I'm calling to talk about renewing your membership, or I'm calling to talk about how we might remain a part of your business strategy this next year. Can we talk strategy? And the same thing with, maybe it's a sponsorship that some of your team has to call in. Again, are we talking about sponsorships or calling to talk about exposure to the targeted market you shared would mean a difference to your business or community growth? So we want to make sure that our talk and our messaging is also relational, and we're not interacting with our members in such a transactional way that they stay in those transactions because we've put them there more or less. Okay, so that's where I really encourage you to work with your teams on messaging. And what does that start to look like for your organization? Taking all those transactional items that we do, and how do we put a relational statement with that more or less? Okay, because that is, if we're putting them there, they're going to stay there. And I want to kind of flip to the next generation, because again, this is an area that all the team needs to be talking about in messaging is, are you aligning your organization or chamber to a sense of purpose? So when your staff are talking to members, putting newsletters together, this is a really key piece for member engagement, is that we're talking to that next generation to where it shows that our organization, our chamber makes a difference in our community, that our chamber is a part of a solution for workforce, that your industry is critical to the codes that are happening in your industry, perhaps, or something. So again, we want to offer experiences that are fostering that collaboration, if they see this. So when you think about COVID-19 has really given us an opportunity with that next generation in many ways, because they saw you as an organization that helped your small businesses, that helped your members throughout. And they most often, chambers and trade associations were very visible during this. So again, messaging the work you're doing is key to showing that you kind of are making that difference. And it's looking at, how do we message differently on different social media platforms where that next generation is hanging out, when they're getting emails from you. Again, the chamber brand, your organization's brand, make sure it has a greater sense of purpose. And that's going to start to connect with your next generation. I know I've got a lot of next generation on this a webinar today. And we usually at conferences, I will call on those next generation. And it's exactly right. They want to make a difference. They want to know that they're not just investing because that's what the other generations have done. They invested because you join an organization when you start a company. So what we want to think about is messaging this. Okay, so I want to talk about this real quick. I was doing some work with a chamber earlier this year. Actually, it was we were in January, so it was last year, earlier that year. And I love that this next generation gal had just never thought of her work at the chamber as that making a difference type of a feel. So as we talked about it, she went out and posted a LinkedIn article really talking about this, finding purpose through work at the Chamber of Commerce, and why millennials shouldn't devalue membership in their local chamber. And I know I have a lot of local chambers on here. The majority of you are, I think, on that. So again, how does your team educate in this way? When you think about, she went on to say in her article, it's fairly well documented that millennials are finding less value in chamber investment, and she thinks that's a tragedy. I think it's just that I call it the whole next generation. There's a couple of generations in there. If they only understood how much good they could do and how much of a difference that they could make in their communities, they would find the chamber invaluable. I think this holds true probably for the trade associations that are on here too. But so when you think about this, from her key points in that article, does your next generation member or even your prospects, do they understand the purpose, mission, and the impact you make to your county, your region, your industry, your community? So it's messaging, and what we educate them about is why they're going to invest, why they're going to renew. And this is where all of your team can play a role on this piece, so much, because again, what does their investment allow you to do? And how does it make a difference in the community or in your industry? And that's what we want to make sure is when that next generation is being recruited or renewing, that we're explaining, when you invest, this is what your investment allows us to do out in the community. This is what your investment allows us to take to the Capitol, to do for advocacy work, whatever. Again, there's so many different of you on here. So, but we've got to be able to talk about it in those realms, that their investment allows you to do this work. And that's what that next generation wants to know about. All of your members really want to know about that. Everybody wants to know that their investment is making a difference, but especially that next generation. I want to stay on that for just a second and share a couple thoughts. When you think about that next generation and that they do want to make a difference, we have to let them, right? When you think about your board meetings for your organization, even, are you reading reports or are you inspiring activity and vision? Because that's why they've joined the board, most likely. So again, they'll grow depth, they'll grow roots in your organization for you for sure. Motivate and inspire them. That's, I think, a key one. Avoid boredom. Remember, the next generation is used to fast stuff. They're used to, video games and the internet, aren't we all, though, now? But still, I think they've looked at digital friends for so long. They want to build community. They want to be involved. So they're looking to become leaders. Role model this for them. So again, the more we can involve that next generation and how we communicate with them is very different than maybe how we've communicated in the past. So make sure we're pulling that into it. So I just like to throw that out there because I think that's a really important piece it is for member engagement, but it's a huge piece for recruitment as well for everybody. So when you think about, again, engagement and delivering value, the thing on this particular visual that I like to talk about is continuing those conversations. Again, we've got to have that information documented in a member record. If all of your staff, when they pull up a conversation or when they pull up a member record, because that member's called in, you want them to be able to pull that member record up, look at the last conversation that happened, and continue that conversation. Otherwise, your staff are all starting brand new relationships each time they talk to that member. They're not compounding the efforts. They're not, like, as an example, I mean, it could be personal things. It can be business awards that the company ran. They hired a new VP, or it could be their son broke their leg in soccer the other day. So when you are able to say, gosh, a couple months ago, I saw that, or I heard about your son breaking his leg, or I know you hired a VP recently. Is there anything we can do to help you onboard that person more? You'd want to just be able to continue conversations. And without that data collected, we're not able to. And I think one of the main things on this is also scheduling relevant follow-up. We all do those emails and newsletters that go out to our members as a bulk email. But anybody on your staff that is talking to a member at an event, talking to them on the phone, going back and forth with email, we want to make sure that if there's a relevant follow-up that needs to happen from that conversation or interaction, that your staff person has put a relevant follow-up for 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever the timeline that's appropriate is put into that member's record, and it pops up so that that happens. That's the relevant follow-up that builds engagement and builds depth in your chamber, in your organization, and builds depth in that company, because you want to, any conversation that's happening, you want to schedule the follow-up that's needed. Otherwise, that member here talks about it with you, but if they don't see a follow-up or something that has taken that issue they had and made it a solution, then it's not really that relevant to them. You're not that relevant to them because they shared it with you, but nothing happened. So I know a lot of people I talk with, they have that happen. Someone's talked to a staff member, a member has, and kind of just dropped the ball. We don't have anywhere to put that. So make sure you are using your member database follow-up systems. They all have one. Growth Zone, Chamber Master, the Member Clicks or WebLink. They've got a couple names they've switched to recently. Event Bank, there's so many of you, all have different ones you're using. They all have those follow-up systems, and I can't say enough about scheduling relevant follow-up through those so that all of your staff can see exactly what's happening. And then think about, how do you call your members each year? Do you get to talk to all your members in a year? I know I have a lot of people go, oh my gosh, we have 700 members. Well, let's think about that. For an example, if you have 700 members roughly, take out your board, take out your committee members, your ambassadors, members you see consistently just through events and such, and maybe those 700 members are now maybe 500 members. Maybe those 500 we really don't see, we really don't get to talk to. This is how your whole team can play a role. And when we say 500 members, if you have 5 staff members, now some of you have far less, some of you have far more, but if you have 700 members, I hope you have at least 2 or 3 staff members. So if you have 5 staff members, you divide this down, 5 staff adopt 100 members each. That's really about 8 or 9 members each month that they need to talk to for intentional engagement to happen, right? So then it sounds like, gosh, we can do that. So I really challenge you that if you're not talking to all your members in a year to see what's new at their company, to see what's of value to them, what's their biggest challenge, what's changed since the pandemic, what's shifted in their business, outside of workforce, what's their biggest challenge. We can do this by breaking it down and having all of your staff play a role. And it can be emails, phone calls, but when you break it down to 10 members a month, you know, that's 120 members there. So anyway, I really feel like that's a big piece. That's what, during when COVID hit, every organization I've talked to said, we called every member we had. Everybody had the time to do it then. How do you keep that going throughout the year? And I heard from most that the members were so excited that they had talked to them and reached out. So let's not let that one fall by the wayside. All right, this is, again, I've just been referencing this through our conversation already, but when you think about this, this is where I want you to really think about maximizing your membership software. Okay, this is where the data allows you to be strategic, and this is where, again, your full team can give some effort on and can really make a difference with, okay? So when you think about this, your software is the foundation of your member relationships and all of your member data, basically, as well as your events and registrations, everything else. But from right now, we're talking about, this is where our engagement information is parked and sitting. So one, how does your full team gather data, and how do they input it and use this? So every interaction would be wonderful to capture. I know it's a hard habit to get into, but a lot of you, I don't know if many of you are using this particular tool, but there's the blind carbon copy. Almost all of the major software companies or software systems you guys are using have what they call a BCC email archive. So if you have somebody who does lobbying at your organization or economic development or workforce, or you're just a 1 or 2 person team and you don't have time to even capture information, and every time you email a member, you could, from Outlook, not within your system, you can add an archive email address up in that BCC, and it will go in and attach that to your member's record. And if you're going, what are you talking about? At the end, let's talk more about that, or email me direct and I can share for your system how you do that. But most of the systems can do that. And it's a huge way to capture that. When you've summarized a conversation with a member, copy that into that archive, and it will end up in that member record without you having to retype all that same information, okay? But also, use your software as a tool for everybody. If you are somebody who does a little bit of advocacy work, I know, again, there's all different sizes here on the training, but if you have somebody who does lobby work or advocacy work, wouldn't they love to know which of your members have an interest in environment or healthcare or safety or agriculture? You can make those fields in there so they can find that information. So this is how your team can help with engagements, by gathering this information. Have a field that says their primary reason for investing. So anybody looking at that member record on the front screen can see primary reason for investing. If you can get their training interests. So when someone from events is talking with members, what are some of the topics they like that really would make a difference in how their team grows at their company? And that's where you want to track that information. So you can run reports from all of these fields. If we're looking to add some education next year, let's run a report and see what we've heard are needs for people. If someone has an interest in sponsorship, but they're maybe not right now, maybe there's not one available, or maybe they just are saying, next year, I'd really like to be a sponsor. I'm hoping to grow to that size. Mark a box, check it. So when you get ready to do sponsorships or asks, you can run a report of anybody who's shown an interest in sponsorship. This is how everybody can play a role, is by gathering this information so your full team can use that. I think we could do a webinar on just this slide alone. There's so much that you can gather and use, but it's got to be good information. What does it say? Garbage in, garbage out. We've got to be able to trust our data, and we've got to know that we're gathering the data that helps all of your team do their job more effectively to serve the member. Okay, so this is a really big piece. And if you are a really small organization, a really small chamber, and you don't have a software system, somewhere I want to try to capture you at the end and talk with you or something. There's a lot of, you don't have to have the robust systems. If you just need a data system to track member information, and you don't need to use it for registration in your website and all, there's some nice free tools out there. HubSpot has one, Zoho has some. So, but again, if you're any size of organization that has 2, 3 staff and beyond, you really need a software system that works for you. It's almost another staff person. So, all right, so that's what there. I'm going to just look at the chat real quick. I see somebody added one in there. Recording. Yes. Someone asked, have you seen an ideal way to utilize Chamber Master system for recording these trends? It's garbage in right now. The system doesn't have a robust way to do this, in my opinion. It does actually have a fantastic system. That's where a lot of my clients work on. And so I've had to train myself on learning this in your custom fields. And I don't want to go too far because not all of you are using Chamber Master, but definitely if we can't cover that here, email me and we'll talk. But custom fields, you can create all of these data fields in custom fields and group them by headings so that you can go right in there and check a box if they're interested in sponsorship, drop down what their training interests are. So yes, there's a fantastic, Chamber Master is one of my favorites for tracking some of this information. Okay, so yeah, definitely we'll look at that. All right, I could stay on that slide forever, but we'll keep moving along here. All right, let's see. Oops, open chat. I need to move this along. Hold on. All right. There we go. All right. So again, I've been talking about the data. Data definitely is knowledge, right? With knowledge, we can be strategic. And when your whole team is strategic, you're so much more efficient. But again, you have to have that tool that you're inputting it into. So in order to be relational, we have to know this data. But again, we just talked about this, recording it. This is the why, I guess. Increasing retention, builds relationships, your staff communicates, it looks to your members like you all communicate so clearly because they can see the conversations just happen. So again, you can audit your system to make sure that your whole team, if you're trying to build new habits for your team, run a report at the end of each day to see who's entered data in, and then you can help them get the habit built, because that's the hardest part. If you have teams that aren't brand new staff, people do fantastic with it because it's from the start. But when we're trying to change the habits of those of us who've been with the organization for a while, it's hard to do that, but it's so valuable. And if we can keep explaining to your team the why do we need this data? Why do we want to collect it? It's a lot easier to work with. Okay, so data does give you the knowledge, and it's really important that we have that data to work with. Yeah, okay, definitely. I think it's Molly who's asking that question about Chamber Master. Molly, let's make sure we set up a little time after this, and I could just tell you a few things, and you can ask me some questions. And I'm not expert on it, but hopefully I do set up a lot of these with my clients. So, okay, all right. So past our data is knowledge. Let's go into our next one. Okay, some possible data you might gather. Again, this is how your team helps with engagement. I know this is all about how the whole team helps with the member engagement. And this is how, how do we get this knowledge gathered? But when they're talking with somebody, what's the chamber role in your success or your organization's role? How best to communicate with you, how to get information to you. Doesn't mean that's going to happen right away, but if we ask it, we have to let them know eventually we'll move to that. But how do they look at your communications? We know there are a lot good share happening on the phone, right? And so again, I've been working with some clients last week and this weekend. They've sent me some emails they're looking to send out. And you know what? I'm going to be scrolling on my phone forever reading that email. Remember, people are opening your emails on their phones so often, or tablets. We've got to make sure. I know that's old stuff, we all know, but just a reminder, remember those emails. Would you take the time to read that whole email, or have you tuned out by the time you've had to scroll once? Again, what are your expectations of our organization? So what is that for that member? What's their expectation? And what is your expectation of them? What do they fear about their business or their profession or their industry? So again, thinking about each question, it really allows you to get deeper with that member and get some of that information out that you need. Again, asking members that one strategic question that every time you're talking to a member that you start to ask. And there's a number of them. These are some of the conversation starters, ways to discover their priorities and motivations. Any of you who, I know a lot of you have seen my sessions, these discovery questions are so key. So we have to ask the right question, because members don't know what they don't know, right? So we've got to ask questions that they hear themselves say they have a need for. Someone's talking to you about needing to grow their business. Tell me about what makes a perfect client for you. You've got to know who their perfect client is if you're going to help them connect on how they can grow their business in that way. How do you recruit and retain strong talent? We have to know that they have a need for that before you start, talking about your solutions. They have to hear themselves say, I have a need. I'm not staying up on the kind of legislative issues that are impacting my business. Then you're able to tell them how you can help them with that. So again, you'll find the questions that are relevant for your organization based on the benefits that you offer. But this is a really, really key step, is that we have our discovery questions for all the different areas that you offer benefits in. If it's just one area, that's great. But if that's not important to them, we've got to be able to pivot and go into other questions for other areas. What kind of connections would mean the most to your business this year? Things like that. We've got to be able to ask, how do they receive the news, industry news, or how do they stay up on the news that's happening in your community that affects businesses? That's where you want to know. There's so many questions that we can ask. So that's, again, having that template. And I do have a sample template that if you're interested, there's kind of sign up for, but I will look to see getting that out to you. I've got all your emails from when you registered, so I can send that out to you as well. But that's a big piece of those conversation starters for all of your staff, or even ambassadors and membership committee people. What are they asking about? What are they talking to members about? If they're just talking about events you have coming up, we know that not everybody goes to your events, right? So we've got to have enough depth in our conversation and our questions that if they have no interest in events, they still see tremendous value in your organization and what the chamber is doing and what other organizations are doing. Okay, I'm going to just pop up here. I always see that little red alert come up. Yes, Deb, I will be sending out the slide deck as well. So I know some people are, I see the numbers have grown since we started. So for those of you who have come on late, I am recording it as well as I'll send the slide deck out to all of you as well. So if you weren't on earlier too, I also mentioned that I have no heat today and it's -2 here in Michigan. So if I have to take a call real quick, I'm going to pop out to do that too. But also it may take me a minute to get some of this information back to you. That's why I was mentioning that. So I'll get it to you at least by tomorrow if I can, okay? But I'll get slide decks out to you all as well. All right, so discovering priorities is really important, okay? And that's where all of your team can play a role. Do they understand what that means? And having that 1 or 2 strategic questions, especially for the areas that they work in, have a question they always are asking. That question, I want to learn one new thing about this member, and I want to educate them on one new thing. So when we keep that going, boy, the information we can gather is powerful. Okay. All right. So when we think about this objections that you hear, this is where some of you have multiple staff members that help calling on renewals and past dues, or even if it's in the recruitment area as well. But basically, what objections do you hear? How does your whole team manage this? How do they respond? Even if they're at an event, they're out in your community, they're out in your industry, and they hear an objection basically, or an hindrance. I'm going to tell you that the majority that I hear are I don't have time to be a member. I didn't see value this year. There's no budget money. A lot of those are very similar. Now, I think no budget and no value go hand in hand. I have money. I just don't see any reason to give it to you. So, or if they really don't have money in the checkbook, they're not going to be the member we don't want their last money, right? Let's go after some members who do have the means and see the value. So in the no time, that comes back to our messaging, doesn't it? If they think they have to have time to come to all your events in order to be a good member, that might be because that's what we've messaged about. We've sent out, and a lot of you will resonate with this, our emails: save the date, don't forget to register, early bird registration, here's our events calendar. If a large percent of your emails going out are about events, and 70% of your members aren't going to events, we know that we have to make sure that we include in our emails, in our messaging, the other value points you have, the other mission work you're doing, the workforce work you're doing, all the work that you do outside of event planning. Do we tell our members about it? And that's a whole nother session in itself right there, because I think we miss that a lot when we don't communicate enough of the value out. And that's when they say they don't see value, because you haven't educated them on your value. So we want to make sure we're always educating our whole team. How do they all talk about value? How do they talk about what you have beyond that? Let's see. I'm going to just read through these real quick. Thank you for. Oh, yeah. Yep. Some people are having bad weather too. They're having internet's in and out. Do you have a Q&A on membership objections so staff has a good response? Oh, yeah, definitely. I do have a couple of those we can send out. And I encourage you, when you are once you kind of sit with your team, again, your team might be staff, it might be a membership committee, whoever it is, and do a session on this. Okay, what objections are we hearing? Let's have, okay, 2 or 3 objections come up, and as a team manage those objections. Even how do we overcome those? How do we talk about that? Some of you may hear those members who say, you know what, my business is strong now, doing great, I don't really need to be a member anymore, because they're only seeing value in your ability to help them grow their business by exposure and networking. But guess what, now the business is going strong, they need you for workforce, they need you to keep other businesses strong so more people keep walking through their doors. And it's the investment conversation, not just joining to grow your business, but joining to or investing to help your whole community, to help your business climate, to help your industry as a whole, those types of things. So, but yeah, I've got a couple of those scripted out. So I'll save this chat and go back and capture some of these and try to send out to you guys what you're looking for on some of these things. Okay. All right. And if I see a few of you say you want it, I may send it to all of you. And if you don't want it, just toss it. Okay. So yeah, but it's helpful to have, don't you find just staring at your computer screen and trying to start to create something is so much harder than pulling a document up and editing it and making it your own, but at least you had something to start with. So I'll get you some of those to start with. Okay. All right. Then there is the social media engagement, right? If you guys don't mind, I'm going to check that chat again real quick. I see a couple. Okay, that's just people saying they'd like that. Perfect. Please do that too if you do want that. Okay. All right. So social media engagements, we know it's huge, right? So when you think about this, anyone who knows me, I love LinkedIn from a business standpoint. You got to have Facebook for your organizations, for your members. A lot of them are working with that for their companies. But for member engagement, especially for some of your decision makers, businesses that are business to business, I think LinkedIn is an amazing tool. Doesn't mean you don't do Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're doing out there. But this is where we want to think about how your whole team can be involved with engagement, because this is when I'm going to use LinkedIn as my example as we talk about this. Okay. I would really encourage like say Monday, if you guys have a meeting, or if not, you don't have a meeting, then on Monday, everybody on your team, gets an update on the new members that signed up, or maybe even the renewals from that week. If again, you all have different renewal schedules, I know. Basically, what I'd like to see is that at least once a month, everybody on your staff connects with members that have just joined or renewed. And if you say, for example, you have a marketing staff person, go to the marketing person at the company that is a member and connect with that marketing person. So now you're starting to build depth at the company and at the chamber, or in your association as well. So we want to start to connect in many ways, so that now they're starting to see messaging from you on LinkedIn and at different levels in the company. But more importantly, let's talk about it from an engagement standpoint. When you are looking at, any of your staff members are looking at your LinkedIn wall, more or less, this is where, when you have a member who's posted something about their business, and it would be great to share out into your network, this is where you can do the like, comment, and share, put it into your powerful business network, because you are viewed as having a very powerful business network. And that share of their information means more to them than that 3-month email check-in I got from you. So the more you can do that, think about, if you have 4 staff members, 5 staff, 10 staff, whatever your staff is, 1 staff, if you made a goal that I'm going to go into LinkedIn and within 5 minutes, I can probably engage with 10 different members. And think about if every staff member, even if we said once a week, but once a day, connected with 5 to 10 members with a like, comment, or share, do you realize how many touches would happen with those members? And they would see that your organization, your chamber is engaging with them, where they're hanging out. They may not reply to your phone calls or your emails and not attend your events, but they're hanging in LinkedIn, and you're hanging with them, and now they see you engaging with them. And all of a sudden now there's a relationship started. Okay, it's maybe digital, but it's a relationship still. So you can also use it to learn the company culture by looking at the keywords. I worked with a group where we were talking about a major investor. We looked at their company LinkedIn page, and they were referencing hashtag partnerships in a lot of their posts. And we looked at their owner of the company. We had their arm around somebody, always celebrating a 20-year anniversary. It was a manufacturing company. And we were able to determine partnerships were really important to this company. So when they went, the strategy to go to that company wasn't to talk about membership investment, wasn't to talk about joining or anything like that. It was to go in and talk about partnerships and being a partner together. And that company had a whole line item just for partnerships. But we learned that by looking and researching who we were going to be calling on. So you can use it for engagement, you can use it for recruitment, but this is where the engagement piece for all of your staff can be so key. A lot of organizations and chambers are having their ambassadors adding an element of social media ambassador, who is always good about sharing your information, connecting with members, things like that. They don't talk for the chamber, they're just engaging with and sharing your information to their networks and such. But anyway, if you have an interest in this, I just want to mention, you see my URL at the bottom there, sharipash.com. I think it's next week already. Yeah, the 13th at 1 o'clock Eastern, I think. I am doing a LinkedIn webinar, hands-on, not concepts. We're not talking. We're going to go in, click how-tos, how to use it for engagement, how to use it for real member work. I'll be honest with you, I do have a small fee on that one. I try to do a lot of these complimentary so you guys can really get some good training in, but also that one does have a small fee, but it's minimal. It's like 20 bucks or something. So, go to there if you want to sign up for that. LinkedIn is an amazing, I worked on site with a large organization just before Christmas. And one of the big takeaways for them is how their staff all could be using LinkedIn and be hitting a large number of members every week for engagement and such. So it's an amazing tool. If you're not using it, I know a lot of people say, oh, LinkedIn, but it's a great one-on-one tool, using your individual profile to shake hands with members all over your community, all over your state, your province, wherever your members are. So can't say enough about this one. I love this tool. All right. Another piece on this, I'm going to talk about storytelling. Let me just check our chat real quick. Okay. Yep. Thank you. All right. Storytelling, really big piece. This is, your staff has the stories. Not one person is the story master. Everybody's collecting stories from members of what successes are, what's happening, feedback, things like that. All your staff are getting emails, phone calls, and when they're at events, people are saying, good things. Now they may be frustrated at times too, but you're all gathering these successes. We want to capture those and get them into writing so that everybody on your team can use these stories when they're talking to members, when they're looking to maybe renew a member, when they're looking to recruit new members, just talking to a member to show value. If you have a Word document where you've captured all this feedback, that's where you can now take that story and use that in an email to a member. You can use that as an email in recruitment if you have a membership team that's doing some recruitment for you. There's so many ways to use storytelling and testimonials as a strategy. So gather those, use them. Obviously, there's all the video ones, but the written ones you can at least use again in social media. You can use them on your website, same with the video as well, but definitely in your emails. That's where you want to have all of your staff be able to go to this document, pull out a story and attach it to an email when they're trying to connect with a member on a certain topic. Sometimes that testimonial or that feedback story will have that member want to talk with your team more than just you saying, I want to talk to you about value points, to talk about your business strategy. But if they see a story from somebody, just 2 or 3 sentences, not a long story, just 2 or 3 sentences, that can really be powerful for you. Okay, and during the pandemic, hopefully you've all captured a lot of those kinds of stories, success points. You're going to be using those for the next 2 years as you recruit and renew members. So capture all of your, maybe again, in a monthly meeting, have everyone bring at least one success story that they've had with a member and start collecting these. That's the best way to get it started. Some of you who are on here right now, write down a name of a business right now or a member that you could go to that you just had a conversation with, and you could capture that. One of the best ways to do that, actually, if you go to my blog, I think I've got a video training or a blog on gathering testimonials. I did it, I think, with Chamber Chat podcast. I think there's a whole half-hour podcast on that. But basically, you're getting the feedback already. Just kind of take what they've emailed you, turn it into more of a testimonial without changing the words, but just, kind of more so it reads like a testimonial. Email it back to them and ask them if they'd be comfortable if you were to share this story with other companies that are looking for the same kind of success that they just shared. And in the meantime, you'd be promoting their business each time you use it. And most of them are going to be so thrilled for you to do that. They want to give you the testimonial. They just don't have time to write it. And they've already given you a kudos in an email or a voicemail. Use that and turn it back to them. Okay. So it's a real easy way to gather them. And I see we are coming up on time here. Wow. All right. So testimonials in there. Okay. Drop member analysis. Another thing all of your team can play a role in. Does your full staff understand why members or investors drop or not renew? It's really important that now, again, it depends on when your renewal cycle is, but if you have one that each month you're dropping members, or if you only drop them once a year, make sure your full team goes through, not just looking at the reasons why they drop, who's dropping. New members, companies that have been in business less than 2 years, generational. You want to dissect and look at this drop member analysis. You want to look at all these pieces. When I go to work with a group, or a chamber or an association, we look at this and it's amazing. We'll go through that and people don't even know who these companies are that have dropped. So that's why it's important we get to that, where we talk every year to each member. But yeah, there's a lot you can do with the drop member analysis. So just make sure the full team is a part of that, because everyone needs to understand how their role at your organization impacts members. And can they help maybe put a stop to some of the drops and such? So really important piece to look at is that drop member analysis. I'm going to flip real quick over here to member recruitment, because this is where I think the full team can also play a role in helping with this. So what we want to think about is, how does the team, your staff, give referrals? If you have one person whose role is to do outreach, or maybe you're a 1 or 2 person operation, could be something how you work with your membership committee or your ambassadors to give you referrals. So just remember, adapt it to your organization. Who gets referrals and who do they give them to, basically. But what makes a good referral from your staff or from your team? You want to know what conversation has taken place to date. I mean, if it's just driving by and there's a new business open, it's not really a referral. That's just a company name, and we can do that easily. We want referrals that are warm. Has a conversation taken place? Details you know about the business or the contact. We want that person who's giving this to you to tell us that. Is the person expecting a call from the chamber or your organization? That's a warm referral. We want to definitely have that. This is just a really quick little sheet you could make up, or I can send you for you to doctor up. That you could have for other staff to make referrals, or an ambassador or your board. You may want to make it a little more formal looking, but if it's just staff and who's giving it, what date, and again, the business name, the contact name, the phone number, their email address, what makes, and then the staff person will be writing, what makes this business a good prospect? They've been in business for 5+ years. They are increasing their product lines, whatever, why we think they'd be a good prospect. What conversations taken place so far? I was talking to them about workforce and they have a really big interest in that. Details you have about the business or the contact. The contact's been new at the company, or they're whatever you put in there. Is the person expecting a call? That's the key piece. Did we say, you know what, let me have somebody from our organization reach out to you, because I think there's some value points that we need to share back and forth. We don't want to say we're going to come out and get your money. We're going to come and recruit you right now, but we want to say we want to hook you up with someone who can have a really relevant conversation with you. Okay. All right. Last piece and last tool is, again, kind of the value proposition with a SWOT analysis. I love SWOT. I know it's outdated. There's a lot of different things you can use, but it really drives down into the point. When you think about an exercise you could do with your staff or your volunteers, this kind of brings it all full circle. So when you think about staffing, your brand, your social media, events, your emails, anything we're looking at here, do a quick SWOT on it. I love it for making decisions. It's not just for the boardroom, not for strategic planning, but think about if you were talking about even our social media. You know, we want to start to do more with connecting and sharing with, like we talked about with LinkedIn. What's our strengths right now of it? What's our weaknesses? What's our opportunities and what's our threats if we don't start something like that? Maybe it's staffing. Some of you on here have 1 or 2 staff. I know you and I know you do. Okay, maybe we need to do a SWOT on staffing. What's our strengths of the current staff or staffing? What's our weaknesses? We're pulled in too many directions, right? What's our opportunities? And what's our threats if we don't do anything with staffing? What more could we do? What are the opportunities? So it's a good way to bring your team in to making decisions. You know, anything, workforce, workforce, every organization right now, their members, biggest challenge, workforce. What's the strengths of what you do as an organization to impact workforce? What's the weaknesses? What's your opportunities and what's your threats? So there, I just love SWOT. And I want to just remind you all to pull that back out. And that's an area that a lot of your team can help with as well. All right, I'm going to do this housekeeping stuff here at the end real quick. You can sign up if you're here, you probably are on my newsletter, because that's basically the way I promoted this. So, but if not, do the Shari Pash to 22828. I'm going to be creating some online courses this year. I'm really excited about that. Newsletters, connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. If you do Facebook, there's my name. I keep it very personal, but business as well through that. So feel free to connect there on either one of those. And then also when I send the slide deck out, you'll also see my email address, Shari@sharipash.com, my website. So feel free to reach out through any of these manners of email or through this area here.